to the American Idiots Podcast, the show where we take the hottest topics currently dividing our country and we debate them with our diverse group of hosts. So sit back and strap in as for the next 2 hours we leave no story undebated and no politician will be spared. It's the American Idiots Podcast live on Podcast Network 49 and it begins right now. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into the American Idiot Show. We've got an awesome group of topics here tonight to go ahead and go through. I am Money Mike. I'll be joined pretty quickly here by the Manny Hispani. But real quick, of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, I want you to go ahead and do a couple things for me. I want you to go ahead and subscribe to the account. Go ahead and hit the notification bell so you can be pre-warned, I guess, anytime we upload, which should be every Monday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Who knows? We may even work on some bonus content here before too long. If you're watching us on Facebook, go ahead and comment anything below that you want to hear us talk about. Go ahead and like the page, share the page, all that good stuff for us if you would. And if you're listening on our audio only feeds, go ahead and drop us a 5-star review on iTunes. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening from. It just helps us out a little bit more with, getting the podcast out there. And, hopefully if you enjoy it, getting our opinion out there a little bit more. But we've got a wide variety of topics today. We're going to be talking about Texas Democrats fleeing the state. We kind of got into this a little bit last week, but they did indeed leave the state over that voters' rights legislation that they were trying to block. We'll also talk about the Border Patrol uncovering a new scheme to get immigrants over the border. Sarah Huckabee Sanders shattered Arkansas fundraising records, but will it translate to her being victorious come the midterm elections? COVID-19 rates on the rise as the Delta variant continues to spread. Senators beginning the process of marijuana legalization at the federal level. Chicago banning travel from certain states, including Arkansas, to mitigate the spread. And child tax care payments are going to begin to go, or have begun to go out, and those are quite controversial as well for your 2022 income tax. And of course, we will provide you with our American Idiot of the Week. But with that being said, we will go ahead and waste no time bringing on the Manny Hispani. Manny, how are you doing this week?
I am doing good.
Manny, I'm going to need you to just start doing hotel reviews. You're in hotels so often now.
You got to go where the work is, man. That is part of being an electrician.
Absolutely.
But I mean, coming off of that vacation, it was awesome. I feel very good. We made sure to come back Saturday night so that we had all day Sunday to just kind of mellow out. Mm-hmm. It was real nice, man.
I noticed you got to go to a Braves game while you were in Georgia. How was that?
Yeah, it was great. Neither my wife nor myself have ever been to a professional sporting event. We say that, major league. We've never been to a major league sporting event. We did go see a minor league baseball team like 3 or 4 years ago. But this was our first major league team anything. So it was really cool.
Awesome. I'll tell you this much. I've been to the New Jersey Nets game. Well, back when they were the New Jersey Nets. But other than that, I think, with us where we live, there's no professional sporting team. So really, we got the Razorbacks and the Travelers, and that's about it. So, yeah.
Right. So if you want major league, you have to figure which direction do you want to go, because you got stuff in St. Louis, depending on your sport.
Right.
stuff in Oklahoma. You got stuff in Texas, Tennessee, and is there anything in Louisiana? Saints.
Saints.
Football, you can go down there.
And Pelicans. But I think, I think everything's in New Orleans, though, as far as Louisiana goes.
And then
do they have baseball? I don't think they have baseball.
I don't know if Mississippi has anything.
I don't think Mississippi has anything either. But I mean, you're right. Pretty much for the surrounding states, we at least have one major source. So yeah, you can definitely travel rather easily to something.
Right.
But, you know, it takes that required want to be able to go out there.
Yes, it does. I mean, it's a good 4 or 6 hour drive.
Exactly.
So, but I think you have it easier than I do. Me being in my location, I have to make it to the interstate before I get that, cruise control that I can just go.
Well, I think, wouldn't Texas be easier for you, though? Like, if we're talking anywhere else, I figure it would be a little bit easier for me. But Texas, you could just hit the back roads and then hit the interstate, right?
Yes, you can. But, I mean, you're more likely to get pulled over and then get to deal with, the racial profile.
Yeah, the random small town cops.
I know where you, the white guy, would think it's easier to do it that way, but
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I see a back road in the middle of nowhere. I think, hey, I can go 90 down this back road. But I know.
Right. Yeah, let me go 56 and a 55, and they get a hint of my color, and they're like, "Yep, light it up." Okay. Sir, I pulled you over because this machete that you were carrying. What machete? As he throws it on my lap.
What? Exactly. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of this. So my thoughts, I don't know whether I've kind of come up with the devil's advocate to the Texas Democrats leaving or whether I kind of have a problem with it, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. We actually have a story from the CBS Evening News on this one.
Well, tonight, the fight over voting rights in Texas has reached a new level of hostility. Democratic lawmakers bolted the state capitol this afternoon to prevent passage of a new election law. And they say they're prepared to stay away for weeks. CBS's Maria Villarreal reports tonight from Austin.
Tonight, Texas Democrats on the run.
Where are you?
I'm at the airport.
Jasmine Crockett is one of nearly 60 lawmakers who fled the Lone Star State for Washington, D.C., most traveling on 2 private jets, grinding the Texas legislature to a halt and preventing Republicans from taking action on a controversial voting rights bill. Had they stayed in state, Texas Rangers could have rounded them up and returned them to the Capitol.
We heard rumblings that they actually were planning to lock the chamber, and they were going to hold us in there until those bills got passed.
The Texas bill would mandate new ID requirements for voting by mail and ban drive-through voting sites and 24-hour voting. 16 other states have enacted similar legislation. Houston Representative Garnett Coleman is also skipping town in protest.
We do drive-by for alcohol, so you can't do drive curbside voting. I mean, where are our priorities?
Over the weekend in Austin, hundreds gave public testimony in marathon all-night hearings, with critics calling the GOP-backed bills an attack on minority voting rights. But Republican State Senator Brian Hughes, who wrote the Senate bill, called it common sense reform.
After this bill, Texas will have even more hours and more days across the state for in-person early voting.
Republican Governor Greg Abbott calls this partisan politics and says by Democrats leaving, they have prevented important legislation from getting passed in the state. But people who have left tell me they plan to stay out of state for at least 30 days until the special session is over to make sure this voting rights bill doesn't get passed into law here in Texas. Nora?
Maria Villarreal, thank you.
Okay, so let's discuss this, Manny. I want to start off with just the voting right bill. So one of the Democrats said something that is interesting to me. He said, in this state, we have drive-through liquor sales or alcohol sales, but we can't have drive-through voting. Now, the smartass in me would say, okay, that's fine. I understand that. But at drive-through liquor stores, do they not also check your identification?
Yes, they do. And usually it's the person purchasing that is the one driving, therefore the only one that gets their ID checked.
Right.
If you come up in a car with 4 people at a liquor store, only one person is paying and having to worry about their ID.
True.
If those same 4 people are going to a voting station, now you're having to check 4 people's IDs. How lit is the car? Are we sure that this ID really goes to this guy?
Right.
That's the kind of stuff that I can see happening. You know, and of course that's me playing devil's advocate the other direction.
Very true. Very true. One of the things though that I will say, so I don't want you to get me wrong on this. I do see some issues with this bill in particular. So I can't really speak on the Georgia because I haven't seen as much on that bill. But the first question I have is, where are these voting or polling locations that they're wanting to close?
Right.
If they're in what you would expect them to be in based upon the uproar from Democrats, which I would assume low-income minority areas, then okay, we may have a problem that needs to be addressed. The other thing that I'm kind of confused about is they want to get rid of the mass voting places, like the stadiums, the football stadiums, like Reliance Stadium, I believe is what it's still called in Houston, and then Texas Stadium in Dallas. Dude, why? That's easy for anybody to get in, and you can house a bunch of people, and they can all vote at the same time, and hey, we're getting them through the process quicker. So
that right there could be the problem in itself. If it is easy for people to get in, it is easy for people to get in with fake data.
Right.
The biggest issue that they were having at these counting locations were the people that were supposed to be watching the counting was not allowed to be right there watching the counting.
Which I did see that was addressed in this voter rights legislation, was that, the partisan poll watchers were going to be able to, that basically was clearing the way for partisan poll watchers to be able to make sure that everything is on the up and up.
So whenever you have a large inflow of people coming in to cast their vote, it is harder. It's more of a bottleneck to be able to count those votes.
As long as it's fair play on both sides, I have no problem with that. As long as you have a Democrat and a Republican representative, which I believe in every instance that they have done this, that's how it's done. I'm pretty confident that they did that in 2000 with the recount. They did have a Republican and a Democrat chiming in to make the decision on whether it was a ballot that was counted or what have you. So definitely something that I think is important. Now, here is where I kind of, this occurred to me over the weekend. So while I sympathize with what they are trying to do, my question that I want Texas Democrats to ask themselves are, whether you would lose or not, are you actually representing the constituents who voted for you? Because the constituents voted for you not to, I'm going to call it act a fool. They voted for you to go in and make these tough decisions, and hey, sometimes you're going to lose. I hate it. I think that this law has a lot of bad in it, but sometimes you're going to lose. And you know how we fix that? In 4 years, we put a bunch of money maybe in the re-election campaign of somebody who would overturn this.
Right.
You're not really fairly and equally representing your constituents, in my opinion, and anybody from Texas can comment if you disagree with me. You're not representing your constituents equally and fairly by deciding for your constituents that you're going to take away your vote. First off, I mean, maybe you can explain this a little bit more to me, but that there
no, not really.
is a problem.
I'm in total agreement with you there. You are knocking your duties because you're supposed to be there fighting for the people that put you in that position. Even if it's not something you're a fan of, they put you in that position for a reason. So you need to do your job. The fact that you are taking off shows these politicians getting paid to go play. And what is that telling your constituents? Our tax monies are going to you and you're not even at work.
I mean, and I've noticed, of course, they were all, and I don't know if it happened, but they were all supposed to run to D.C. to talk to Biden. If you remember, this was what we were talking about last week. I wonder if Biden was sitting there, because I've noticed he hasn't really talked on it. I'm wondering if Biden's sitting there like, don't come to me, dude. I don't want you. I don't want this issue on top of me.
Right. Like, and I don't know how many. I
wouldn't blame them.
They hadn't showed whether or not they reached.
Yeah.
DC or not.
I was about to say, I think they did, because I think they met with Kamala. I'm not so sure that they met with Joe. They may have. I'm not 100% on that.
Well, I know with the military, you can be derelict of duty. I don't know what can be pressed with these representatives. Are they representatives? Are they senators? Is it just senators?
I'm not sure, but the governor has said that they will be arrested as soon as they get back in Texas.
So yeah, I'm going to say, so what we're looking at is people that are derelict in duty, and there is a way to out seating senators that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, correct?
So
is that what Mark Taylor went through?
Yes, there is, but that kind of seems a wee bit harsh. I definitely see a punishment should be enforced, because once again, you look and, you know, what's the main complaint about politics in these underappreciated communities that you're fighting to allow to continue to, you know, have access to voting locations? They don't have representation. You've effectively taken away their representation.
Right.
So I do see some form of punishment. Jail time seems a wee bit excessive to me.
Well,
but I mean,
I don't think it has to result in jail time. I mean, they were just talking about removing her from her position.
Right.
Whenever she was talking all her crazy stuff about the Jewish space lasers and.
Right, exactly.
And all of that.
Maybe even something like that. Which, I mean, I guess doesn't really push which really hurts the issue even more going forward, because you're not only shutting your voice for this vote, you're shutting your voice for more votes. But, yeah, Governor Abbott has said that they're going to be arrested as soon as they come back in the state. So, once again, I think arresting them is a wee bit ridiculous. Do I truly believe that Governor Abbott's going to get them arrested? No. I think that would
be an arrest on the books, period. I mean, they're not going to spend any time in jail. They'll be taken to the station, booked, and released. They'll probably have a court date set up, and it'll be a slap on the wrist. They'll have a fine to pay, and that'll be it. But they're going to want to make a statement by making sure that they're punished for doing this, because at the end of the day, you were put in that position to represent a portion of your state.
Right. And you
can not to run off when it looked like you were going to lose.
Exactly. And that's my problem. Like, I can understand a lot of things. I can understand, hey, we're going to go stand out in the rotunda. Hey, we're going to go stand, you know, out in front of the Capitol building. Yeah, okay.
Even if they stood out and protested because they didn't believe that it's the right thing.
Protest that way. But to stop the vote in this manner, number one, you're not putting your name out there on the book as somebody who opposes this on the official record. You're not, like, there's so many things. You're literally, you know, as much as we complained about taking people's voices away, you're literally taking your own voice away, let alone, like we said, your constituents who, let's be honest, and a lot of these people who lead the state are probably representing these people in these communities that, could lose their polling place or what have you. So definitely these are the people that need to be there fighting tooth and nail.
So by leaving, knowing that you are putting the vote on hold, is that not a type of?
What they're doing is they left the state so that it could not be voted on during this special session. So basically, they're in essence, they're canceling the special session that the governor created just to get this voting rights bill act.
Right, and is that not putting a hold on the vote?
I guess it's putting a hold on it in their minds. I guess it's. I guess what I'm saying is, in their minds, they think they're canceling any opportunity this bill has to be voted upon.
Right, but I mean, it could just come right back up.
Right. As long as that's the governor.
So what I'm saying is that not a form of obstruction to an official proceeding?
That's a good point. That's a good point.
And that comes in with my American Idiot of the Week. So we're going to loop back to this.
Okay, absolutely. That's a good point, though. That is honestly a good point. I never thought about it that way because I believe that's what a lot of these Capitol riot protesters are being charged with. So
yes, it is.
Definitely something to keep in the back of my mind for sure, because that's interesting. I never thought about it like that, that they were interrupting, a proceeding. So interesting to, and I want to say this before we move on. A lot of people laughed at Senator Cruz when he read Green Eggs and Ham. But, I mean, at the end of the day, he still accomplished his, what's it called? Not blockade. His, he prevented a vote. Filibuster. Yeah, he still conducted his filibuster and was successful in it without having to flee Washington, D.C. So, I mean, I feel like there were things they could have done that would have helped matters rather than just leaving the state and going and asking Joe Biden, who honestly I feel sorry for in this case because he's got this dumped in his lap now, for help. Okay, moving forward, Border Patrol undercovers new schemes in getting immigrants over the border. And we actually have a story just on flat immigration. I couldn't find one specifically about this story, but this is from KNS 5 in San Antonio.
At first at 10, a rise in women smugglers. Tonight, police tell us these two sisters in their 70s are suspected of smuggling migrants. We're blurring out their faces because they have not been charged.
They were questioned today in Junction, about 2 hours northwest of San Antonio. The police chief there says he is seeing more women smuggling migrants. Let's bring in Eyewitness News reporter Henry Ramos. And Henry, why more women?
Aaron and Deborah, Junction Police Chief Rudy Supak says police aren't likely to suspect them because women doing this crime is out of the norm. He also says women tend to have better driving records. The chief tells me there is no set profile of a smuggler.
This Dodge vehicle with a handicap placard driven by two sisters in their 70s. A duo police suspect were smuggling 3 migrants from Honduras.
The driver stated that was her grandkids. When asked what their names were, she could not tell us what their names were.
Junction Police Chief Rudy Supak says 3 men in the back told officers the driver was their grandmother.
They didn't know grandma's name. They didn't know where grandma lived.
KNS 5 is not showing the 2 women because they were not charged, but police posted their photos on Facebook saying, quote, "Who would have thought smugglers could be elderly?" The chief says they are still investigating and believe more people could be involved.
We have seen an increase with females being used to smuggle.
Just last month, Chief Supak says a woman was driving a Ford truck with 27 migrants crammed inside.
They were packed in there, laid on top of each other like pieces of wood.
The police chief says the woman in that case could have made more than $17,000. He says smugglers could bring in anywhere from $650 to $1,500 a person.
The chief also tells me that they are certainly seeing an increase in these events and that these smugglers are becoming more aggressive. In fact, they're dealing with a lot of high-speed chases in the town with just 7 officers. We're live just north of downtown tonight. Henry Ramos, KENS 5 Eyewitness News.
Hold up. Before I get into my actual story, too, in addition to this, did this man just say 7 officers in a border town where
Yes.
they are having this issue? That's problem number 1, let's be honest here.
Yeah, but there's a lot of small towns between the larger ones. So that's what these people do, is find the vulnerable spots where they can get across.
Right.
That was the whole point of Trump announcing the building of the wall.
By the way, 77-year-old woman. Holy crap.
Yeah.
And they couldn't tell her grandma's name. Man, couldn't tell her grandma's name.
Yeah, the thing that really jumped out at me was the, 27 people?
Yes.
That one had crammed in a truck?
Mm-hmm.
But they were all guys.
Yes. And they were all.
I mean, where are the fleeing families that are trying to get away from the devastation? And
interesting you mentioned that. So now I don't know if you read the story that I sent, but Border Patrol agents are finding trailer smuggling schemes. And in the one apprehension that they mentioned, they found 74 non-citizens in this trailer that they were smuggling across the border. Once again, I mean, come here, come legally. 74 people. Why would you subject yourself to that? I mean, maybe that's my white privilege and being an American privilege, but holy crap, they had to have been on top of each other, because the pictures, and I'll share my screen actually real quick so the viewers at home can see it. The pictures of this trailer, it looks like a horse trailer here. Let me see if I can get it bigger. It looks like a horse trailer that they're in. Like, they have got to be on top of each other in one of those things. That is insane. And I mean, it's a problem that's not going away anytime soon, as long as the current administration continues to ignore that there is an issue.
Exactly. And they, everybody wants to say, oh, it's just people that are trying to get here to flee bad situations across the border. And that is not always the case. In fact, the majority of the time, it's just people that are trying to get here to make money to send home.
Right. And
which isn't a bad thing, but get a work visa and do it the correct way.
Right. Get a green card or what have you. And I believe that's what the temporary work visas are, the green cards. Get you a green card, bingo, bango, you're good to go. Then you can just send your money back home like you were planning on it. And once again, I don't want people to get me wrong on my end. I'm not going to speak for Manny here, but I mean, you're not only hurting by ignoring this, you're not only hurting the fact that you have these undocumented immigrants coming into the country at high rates. You're also hurting the fact that when they do get apprehended, you're hurting exactly what you campaigned against, which are these facilities that they're being put in that are subpar. So, I mean, something needs to be done on both fronts, how we're handling the people that are being apprehended, as well as the fact that there are a ton of these people coming across the border every single day.
And these people, a lot of them don't make the minimum wage that is out there, because they're working under a false number, so they don't have to be paid everything, because who's going to complain?
Exactly.
When crime is done around them, are they going to call the cops to report the crime? No, because they're going to be looked at as, oh, well, what are you doing here in the first place? So you have a lot of stuff that goes on that is kind of
right. I mean, You're absolutely right. Employers take advantage of the fact that these people can complain about the fact that they're not receiving minimum wage. So this is a long spiraling process.
Criminals use that to their advantage too. They will go and rob these people knowing that they're not going to call the cops.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's asinine and absolutely unacceptable the way that this all works out, because it's a downward spiral, honestly, is what it is. Okay, so moving on to Sarah Huckabee Sanders shattering Arkansas state fundraising records. The question I'm posing is, will it lead to a victory? And we have a story from 5 News on Sarah Huckabee.
Former White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders' campaign says it's raised another $4.2 million in her bid to become Arkansas's next governor. That brings the total amount to $9 million since launching her campaign. And that's more than double the amount Governor Hutchinson raised in his entire 2014 campaign. Sanders is facing off against current Arkansas Attorney General Leslie Rutledge in the Republican primary. They're both running to succeed Republican Governor Hutchinson, who's barred by term limits from seeking re-election next year. Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin had originally announced he was running for the Republican nomination as well, but dropped out of the race and is now running to replace Rutledge as Arkansas Attorney General. Meanwhile, on the Democratic side, 4 people have announced their candidacy for the party's nomination in the governor's race. They include Anthony Bland, who was the Democratic nominee for lieutenant governor in 2018, Chris Jones, small business owner James Russell from Little Rock, and former Walmart executive Zupa Mays. And Ricky Dale Harrington Jr. running on the Libertarian ticket. This is Harrington's second campaign. The former prison chaplain challenged Republican Tom Cotton in the 2020 U.S. Senate election, winning 33% of the vote in the general election.
So there we saw our old friend of the show, Mr. Harrington there. But number one, I'd like to say that one Democrat looked like he was a little off his rocker there. But let's talk about this. Obviously, whoever Sarah Huckabee Sanders runs against in the general election, because I can almost assume that she's going to get past Leslie Rutledge.
Right.
They're going to obviously be at a spending deficit. The question is, do you believe that a Democrat could possibly overcome that problem? I mean, you're talking about she's already, she's 3 months in, and she's already raised more money than Asa Hutchinson did his whole run.
And you can't necessarily pay attention to the amount of money that's there, because you've got all kinds of corporations and stuff like that throw into that. I mean, if you have one good donor versus these 10 over here that are okay donors.
To put it into perspective, I think they said 3/4 of the amount of money she has raised has come in from out of state.
So, right there shows you that. The other thing is you have to look at, with Arkansas being a primarily Republican state, do you think that a Democrat would have had a chance anyway?
I will say this, gubernatorially, usually the state will switch off a lot like the presidency, I've noticed. And this is just since I've been following politics. So really, I've been following politics for 3 administrations now in Arkansas, and it went Huckabee Republican, BB Democrat, Hutchinson Republican. Both got 2 terms, and, they switched off after the 2 terms. I believe, just looking back on it, I think that's pretty much how the state goes, though. Usually 2 terms with one party, then the next party gets 2 terms. I could be wrong on that. I think maybe the Clinton years, I think after Clinton left in 92, I think Jim Guy Tucker, who was also a Democrat, took over. But, he was ousted pretty quick, so,
Right.
Is what it is. But I think she's going to be tough to defeat.
She's going to be tough to defeat, yes. My point is, while breaking a fundraising record is awesome, you can't always track a money coming in record as a victory, because you don't know how much came from just one donor.
Well, and not only that, one thing that I think people are failing to understand too is Sarah is not only running. So Sarah's going to be on the Arkansas stage, yes, but I have a feeling as we get closer and closer to these midterms, we're going to see Sarah not only campaigning here in Arkansas, but she's going to be campaigning in Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana for other Republican candidates.
Right.
And that's going to cost some money as well. So we never know what this money funneling in from other states could be for. Hey, are you going to come support my guy and campaign with him? Okay, cool. Here's some money.
Right.
You know, that may be that situation too. Because let's be honest, if you got the Trump dust on you right now in the Republican Party, you can do no wrong. So
right. So that's already a positive right there. And Biden administration seems to be going downhill pretty quickly. So that's why I was saying, even if it wasn't Sarah, even if it wasn't a record of fundraising, do you think the Democrats really had a big chance to win?
Well, and I mean, looking
with this election.
Looking at the lineup that they had there, I didn't recognize a single name. I didn't even
no name recognition.
I didn't even know the first gentleman was the lieutenant governor nominee, to be completely honest with you.
Right. So with that, you have your other calibers that they're looking at. Okay, they've got a female, so they're testing to see who reacts to the female vote. They've got the African Americans, so they're trying to see who goes for that vote.
Right.
So I mean, they're trying to cover their base to see, almost like they're fishing for information. Here's our potential candidates. Who are you going to back? Democratic.
Absolutely. And I mean, technically, I guess that's what a primary is for. But, you know, as we go along here, we'll probably get a little bit clearer of a picture. Probably from November on is when we'll start clearing up the picture quite a bit. Okay. So this one is definitely something that I want to discuss. COVID-19 rates continue to rise as the Delta variant is spreading, and we have a story from ABC News on this.
And COVID cases are on the rise across the country. 47 states and the District of Columbia are now reporting increases, with the CDC saying the Delta variant accounts for 58% of new cases. In Arkansas, hospitalizations are up nearly 64% in just 2 weeks, with doctors saying patients are sicker and younger than before and almost all unvaccinated. Alex Perez is in Little Rock, Arkansas, with the latest.
This morning, a new COVID crackdown, with 47 states reporting an increase in cases since last week. Chicago now reinstating restrictions for unvaccinated travelers from 2 of the states hit hardest by the Delta variant, recommending those from Missouri or Arkansas get a negative test or quarantine upon arrival. This as hospital admissions in Arkansas soar, up nearly 64% in just 2 weeks.
All of our ICUs and our medical beds, surgical beds are completely full.
Dr. Stepi Mehta says these patients are sicker than the previous surges, younger, and about 92% of them are unvaccinated.
It's frustrating, and there's a little bit of disbelief that are we really going through this again?
Vaccine hesitancy widespread in this state, even by some who were gravely ill. Cheryl Tucker, who's unvaccinated, just released from the hospital Tuesday after a week battling her second bout of COVID.
Will you get vaccinated now? I'm not going to say 100%, but I'm thinking about it.
That hesitancy was what Tennessee's vaccine chief says she was trying to combat when she was fired. Dr. Michelle Fiscus believes she was terminated for working to educate the public about vaccines. In Tennessee, less than 45% of those who can get a shot are fully vaccinated.
Politics have been put ahead of the welfare of the people of Tennessee and the children of Tennessee. And those people are going to suffer. And this idea that people don't need to be vaccinated against the most significant infectious disease threat that we have faced in over 100 years, I think is a travesty.
So, Diane, doctors here really concerned about what's to come. Also, there are 6 medical organizations now across the country that are urging hospitals and healthcare facilities to mandate that their employees be vaccinated. Diane?
All right, Alex Perez in Little Rock, Arkansas. Thanks, Alex. And let's go to physician at Stanford Children's Health, Dr. Alok Patel, for more on this. Dr. Patel, thanks for being here. Cases are increasing in 47 states, and 58% of those cases are due to the Delta variant. Should vaccinated people be worried about breakthrough cases, or is this strictly a risk to the unvaccinated?
Diane, it's a good question, and thank you for having me. So I think everyone across the world should be worried about what we're seeing right now with the transmissibility and the outbreaks from the Delta variant. But as far as actually getting severely ill, hospitalized, or dying, that is by and large more of a risk for people who are unvaccinated. There's a very small amount of people who are getting breakthrough symptomatic infections if they're vaccinated. Now, breakthrough infections, asymptomatic, we expect some of those to happen, but getting vaccinated is a surefire way to protect yourself and your community against any variant. 99% of recent COVID deaths are in those who are unvaccinated. I wish I could just put that as a billboard in every single city in this country.
Now, in Tennessee, less than 45% of those who can get a shot are fully vaccinated. And the vaccine chief there, you heard her, she said she was fired for trying to educate the public about vaccines. What do you make of that?
What I make of that is a clear discrepancy between public health officials, evidence, what we know keeps people protected, and what's happening in these state and local level politics. Now, we all stand with Dr. Michelle Fiskus. She was doing the right thing in terms of advocating for children, for young people who may not be able to get vaccinated and are absolutely depending on the adults around them to do the right thing, Diane. And what's even more troubling is what we're hearing is that the Tennessee actually wants to block outreach for all vaccinations. So not just related to COVID-19, but other adolescent and childhood vaccines as well. It's very troubling.
Now, the FDA has warned of a potential rare neurological complication with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. What do we know about that so far?
Well, the actual complication is called Guillain-Barré. So it is a disorder that actually targets your nervous cells. Your immune system can actually attack your own nervous cells. Now, it sounds very scary. It's actually rare, but we do see it. There's about 100 unconfirmed cases from the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. That's out of almost 13 million shots given. So, the FDA should look into this and look to see if there actually is a correlation. But, I worry that people are getting a distortion of perception of risk. People are worried about these side effects that are less than 1 in a million, not even confirmed. And they're not actually worried about what we know can happen from COVID-19 itself, from what can happen to you or your loved ones, or even if you get a mild infection and you could become a long hauler later. So people really need to understand that risk, benefit.
Now, one of the questions that often comes up when we see potential side effects from the vaccine is whether there's more risk of getting the vaccine or if those 100 people, for example, would have potentially gotten this illness regardless of whether or not of getting the vaccine. Do they know yet that this is definitely linked to the vaccine? And what is the risk-benefit analysis at this point?
So we don't know yet for sure if it's linked to the vaccine, but similar to what we've seen in the past, with blood clots, for example, it is worth looking at. It is worth reviewing. And with myocarditis is a more recent and poignant example, just so the public knows that, hey, this is how seriously our safety checks are. And like you mentioned, with risk benefit, you look at the risk. Let's say that we're looking at these very rare side effects. Right now, they're being estimated at about 1 in a million. If you look at the benefit, we said it at the top of the show, you and I did, is that 99% of recent COVID deaths are in those who are unvaccinated. We are right now, even myself, my colleagues, are seeing young people in the hospital, intubated, struggling for their lives because they weren't vaccinated themselves or the people around them weren't. And it is gut-wrenching that we still have to have this debate after we know what we need to do to keep ourselves and people around us safe.
All right, Dr. Alok Patel, always great to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the...
Shut up, George. Okay, so I saw you were making some notes here, so I want to start off with
one question, because it goes with one of my notes. Did they actually give a number of deaths?
They didn't give a number of deaths, but it does go along with your note there. 99% of current deaths due to COVID-19 are from the unvaccinated. That is
Right.
a number, though. They're finally starting to throw out numbers. That's
Yes,
a
they're
big
throwing out
number.
numbers, but they're just giving you percentage without an actual number.
Right. Very true.
You
But I mean,
still have to solve for X.
let's look at this. So Arkansas over the past week has had over 100 deaths. We'll say 100. So 99% of those, 99 out of those
99
the
for
unvaccinated.
people that didn't have a vaccine.
So were people that didn't have the vaccine.
That's what I said.
Oh, I thought you said did. Okay, I apologize.
No, did it.
So let's look at this. My first question, and he said something that kind of perked my ears up. He said that he believes that this is an issue with not getting the information and the risk cost assessment out there properly to the American people for whether they would have a terrible side effect or whether they would die from COVID-19. They haven't done a good job of presenting that. Would you agree?
I would agree, because the bottom issue, in my opinion, is even people who have been vaccinated are getting this Delta variant.
Which he did say. He said, and he didn't, this is one that I did notice he didn't throw any numbers out there on, but he said by and large the new Delta variant is striking with side effects amongst the unvaccinated, but those who are vaccinated are still catching it. They're just asymptomatic. So what's interesting to me is I could be carrying the Delta variant right now inside of me, and my fiance could catch it because she's unvaccinated. What are we doing? Are you telling me that because I'm unvaccinated, I need to be going and getting tested more to make sure that I don't catch it? Like,
and here's another thing that we're not even thinking about. I mean, that the COVID
the Delta or the
COVID period.
Mm-hmm.
The Delta variant, it's still the virus. So
COVID
period stays alive on surfaces.
Right.
So regardless of if you're vaccinated or not, you could still be carrying it on you.
And not even know it.
You still be transferring it to other people.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, their push is to have everybody vaccinated. The problem I have is they jumped this vaccine to get it pushed through. That is the problem I have.
Right. And he did finally kind of throw some numbers out there about the J&J with this new neurological disease. He said about 100 cases not confirmed to be linked with J&J, even though he did admit that even he thinks that it should be investigated further. Out of 13 million doses given, is that still, knowing it is 100 out of 13 million, which I'm not even about to do that math, it's a small percentage. Even then, does that still worry you as much as it did when we were talking about it last week and didn't know the numbers?
Yes, because they don't know what's causing it.
Right.
So there's no way to dictate who should take it and who shouldn't.
Exactly.
Along with the death count, 99% of the deaths were unvaccinated people.
Mm-hmm.
But that 1% of people are vaccinated and still dying.
And they're still dying, right. What do you make of the fact that when the initial spread happened, they were saying, the older ones were the most at risk. Now, the UAMS doctor there that they were interviewing said something about, everybody's getting younger and younger. How does
right. But that could be because it's the Delta variant. It's a modified version of the COVID virus anyways. Mm-hmm. And, there's still other variants that are going to be coming through.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another issue that I have with this vaccine is how do we know that the vaccine works against all these variants that weren't even around whenever they rushed this vaccine through?
Well, and she did ask the doctor point blank, if you get vaccinated, are you safe against the variant? And he kind of pivoted to the point we talked about earlier where he said he wouldn't say yes. he would say you're more likely to be asymptomatic. So he absolutely danced around saying yes. He would only say you're more likely to be asymptomatic, which honestly I think is more dangerous.
So my question is this, okay? We know the Delta variant is out there.
Mm-hmm.
What is the percentage of the recovery? You've got the computer there, I don't, or I would have already looked at it.
Right. So active COVID cases in Arkansas. Okay, so we have currently active, we have there's no way we have 300. Maybe we do. It's saying we currently have 365,000 cases active in Arkansas alone. This was updated 2 hours ago. And the death toll right now is 6,007. So, I mean, hold on. So I said 365,000 and the toll is 6,607. Okay, hold on.
Have they stopped informing people about the recovery rate?
I don't believe the governor is doing his briefings anymore. It's about 60%. It looks like times 100. Yeah, about 60%. Or excuse me, 6%. You have about a 6% chance of death, it looks like. Because I couldn't imagine it's a 6% survival rate.
All right, so a 6% chance of death.
Mm-hmm.
So he wants to talk about risk reward.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with a recovery rate of
the Delta
94%.
Yeah, it would be 94%. Which I mean, again,
94% chance I'm going to recover from catching it. 6% chance I'm going to die.
Right.
That doesn't seem like a big issue.
Now, I would agree.
And I'm not trying to undermine anyone or downplay anyone that is struggling with it. It is a very sad thing.
Mm-hmm.
All I'm trying to say is, based on the numbers we're looking at, if we've got the numbers right, you're more likely to recover from this than to die from this.
Right. But what worries me is where we are now as a state. So nobody is coming out, and like I said, the governor's not giving his daily briefings anymore, so that's maybe why he's not coming out and talking about it. But we're pretty much at critical mass right now for ICU beds in the state. So my thing is, at least in Arkansas, I think that does increase your chances of, if you do have a problem, you're kind of, for lack of a better term, you're kind of fucked. If we have no ICU beds in the state and you start having issues, what are we going to do with you? You know what I mean?
Right. So those numbers could go up, definitely.
Right.
My wife and I went to Tennessee and then all the way to Tybee Island, Georgia, and then to Atlanta, Georgia. We made a stop in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
Bunch of gas pumps that we touched. Neither her nor myself seemed to have any ill feelings.
Now, the other thing, and it kind of feeds into that a little bit, that I do want to talk to you about.
And while we're on the subject, I would invite everybody to track out there from the time of this broadcast. Mm-hmm. We were at the Friday night Atlanta Braves game.
Mm-hmm.
People from Tampa Bay were there because that's who they were playing.
Mm-hmm.
Those people were packed in there, and I didn't see many masks at all.
That's where I was going.
I would like for everybody to try to keep up with numbers in the Atlanta area. I'm curious to see if some of that rises.
Well, and that's interesting to me, and that's what I was going to ask. Do you think, so now Arkansas just passed a law over the past 7 days in the middle of this increase, mind you, that the governor can no longer issue another mask mandate. He cannot do that any longer.
Wow.
Do you think, like, it is illegal for him to do that? Do you think that we could possibly be seeing this here in Arkansas spreading as much as it is due to the fact that, you know, people, number one, I'll be completely blunt and honest. Let's be 100%. We're on the honor system as far as vaccinations go.
Right.
People who aren't vaccinated are going without masks now that the mask mandate's lifted.
Right.
Do you think that is contributing to this increase and this, you know, we're basically the hotbed right now for the country.
No, and my bottom line, my own opinions, I've got no data to back it up. I've got no science behind it. My personal thoughts on this entire matter is it is not spread as widely through breathing.
Right, which I believe this one is spread a little differently.
It is spread by touching surfaces that are infected.
Right, right. And actually,
so one of the things my wife and I did while we were out was anytime that we touched a door, they usually had the sanitizer right there on the other side. We used the sanitizer.
Awesome. Awesome. And, you know, that's actually interesting because I do remember when the Delta was first actually seen and they were first starting to, you know, really catch on. People were saying, well, the Delta strain isn't as deadly. And it's interesting to me. I want to compare after we get out of this, you know, knock on wood, that we do get out of this. I want to compare which was more deadly, whether it be
and that's the funny thing because it's almost like they're talking out both sides of their mouth. Early on, they said it's not as deadly, and now they're throwing numbers out. 99% of the deaths,
right,
are from unvaccinated people. 58% of the virus out there is the Delta variant. But they don't give you actual numbers of the 99% of the deaths of the unvaccinated people. How many of them were Delta variant? How many were the regular?
Exactly. That's what I want to see. And I'm wondering if they are differentiating, if they're just marking them as COVID deaths. If they are.
That's the other thing. Before, they weren't even differentiating from someone that was dying from cancer and expected to live 2 weeks and only made it to 13 days instead of the 14th day. Oh, that's a COVID death.
Right.
I mean, and we're supposed to believe that they're keeping track of this stuff accurately now?
Right, exactly. I mean, and once again, we say all this, and I think, Manny, you would agree with me. We say all this to say this. This has been a complete and utter failure on this administration, federally and locally with our state government, to, number one, accurately report what a COVID death is and what a Delta death is. Facts and questions about the vaccines. They've failed to properly educate people about the vaccines. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous, the failures on both parts. I mean, 6 months ago, the governor was bragging about, you know, how he never shut down and he's the light of the world when it comes to COVID. And now here we are 6 months later, the hotbed for COVID in the United States. I mean, and you could argue maybe it was our turn or what have you, but, you know, whatever.
And honestly, while you can look at Arkansas as a hotbed, I'm not going to say the hotbed because look at all of the states around us.
Right.
People pour into Arkansas. We just got out of the 4th of July. There was a lot of people that were coming over for the 4th of July holiday. A lot of vacations are taken in Arkansas.
Right.
So I don't think that Arkansas is the hotbed because of Arkansans. I think Arkansas is a hotbed because of people that travel through it.
Right, absolutely. And that's very true too. I mean, what a lot of people are also not looking at is the fact that, yes, this is probably spreading quite easily because we're all going on summer vacation. We're all going to Florida. We're all going to Tennessee, things like that. So,
I mean, you just look at it. When people want to go to Silver Dollar City, a lot of them are passing through Arkansas to get to Missouri. When people are wanting to go to Six Flags, people from Tennessee, people from Mississippi, they're going through Arkansas to get to those destinations. When people are wanting to go to the Memphis Zoo, you've got Oklahoma and Texas that are coming through Arkansas to do that.
Absolutely.
So I just really think that a lot of it are circumstantial cases that they are trying to track to Arkansas when it's not necessarily Arkansas that is starting it.
Now, one thing I do want to ask before we go to our commercial break here and move subjects, what do you think about the case of the woman, the woman that was fired in Tennessee? She says it was because she was trying to educate people on the vaccine, and others are saying, obviously it was for whatever reason. I haven't seen an official reason, and I don't think they gave an official reason. But what do you make of that?
I don't remember it, in all honesty.
Okay, that's fine. And
while I was writing, that was playing, and so I didn't get to hear a lot of the details in the video because I was writing these other numbers.
That's perfectly fine. I just wanted to check in with you and see if you had any thoughts on that.
Some of the things that Ed wrote down as he was talking was he actually said that having the vaccine was a surefire way of protection. But we know that is false because people with the vaccine are still getting it. 1% of people that are vaccinated are still dying from it.
Right, and you
can't say it's a surefire way.
Right, exactly. He absolutely talked out of both sides. He spoke a lot, and he spoke very fast. Once again, I just want numbers. Like, even if you think you're talking over my head, give me numbers, because numbers makes it, I guess to me, numbers make it real. If you can tell me 6,000 people died today and 5,999 of them were because they were unvaccinated, then okay, yes, the vaccine is obviously showing.
And see, I don't even need, I don't need the technical data. Give me the raw numbers. I don't need your percentages. I don't need your polling points.
Exactly.
I need to know actual numbers.
Well, and the woman who was fired in Tennessee, she did say something that was interesting. She said that they've turned this into a political thing. And that is what I feel like it's become. It's political. You have the president of the United States out here basically campaigning for this vaccine.
Right now, the current president of the United States, but if you go back when Trump was saying, well, Dr. Fauci is wrong on this, and Dr. Fauci's talking about, well, masks really don't work in the background, but when he's in front of the cameras, oh, we need to mask up. And then later on, he's saying, well, 2 masks are better than 1.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and I mean, I'm not going to lie. I've even seen that some people are talking about, and once again, it's the CDC talking out of both sides of their mouth, but I've even seen it where they're saying that, they may recommend again that vaccinated people start wearing their masks. And I'm assuming it all has to do with.
And in several places, I've seen that they are still, they recommend that vaccinated people continue to wear masks.
Well, and it may be because of exactly what we talked about. You could carry it and be asymptomatic and not know and then pass it on to somebody. I could understand that. Yeah. But I mean, that speaks to, hey, why don't we have something that basically makes you immune to it?
Because they stopped testing.
Like essentially they got it
to where they wanted it, rolled it out, and stopped testing.
Exactly. Essentially, to this point, the vaccine seems like almost like a drug, almost like a medication you give somebody when they have it to mitigate the symptoms.
Right. It's a cancer treatment.
Exactly. I want something that will give me immunity to it completely. But, I guess you get what you get at this point, and you better not complain about it. Okay, so we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to come back and talk a couple more subjects, then give our American Idiot of the Week. So you're watching American Idiots, and we will be right back. Each and every Monday night, join the American Idiots podcast for a fresh look at the top headlines that are currently dividing our country. It's the American Idiots podcast only on Podcast Network 49. Every Saturday afternoon from 2 to 4, join the Natural State Sports Podcast with Michael Carnahan, Aaron, and Mike Pettis, where we take the top headlines in all of sports and we debate them for you, the fan. It's the Natural State Sports Podcast only on Podcast Network 49.
I've been champion for a long time, Tony, simply because I'm the best there is. I got more women waiting for me in that hallway, quivering, shaking, having conniptions than you met in the last 5 years. You know why? Because I just happen to be Slick Rick.
Join Michael and Aaron each week as they break down the most influential and sometimes downright hilarious pay-per-views in professional wrestling history. It's the Wrestling Wrap-Up Show only for you on Podcast Network 49. Each and every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, join Michael Carnahan and Lisa O'Brien for the Clear and Convincing podcast, live on Podcast Network 49, where we look at the most infamous cases in our country's history, not from the court of public opinion, but from the court's perspective. It's the Clear and Convincing Show on Podcast Network 49. It has never been any easier to keep up with all of your favorite Podcast Network 49 shows. If you're a fan of just listening along, you can always go to iTunes or Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts, and subscribe. If you're more of a visual listener to our shows, go ahead and check out our Facebook and YouTube lives, or you can always go in and check out the archived content. Once again, it's never been easier to keep up with Podcast Network 49. Welcome to the American Idiots Podcast, the show where we take the hottest topics currently dividing our country and we debate them with our diverse group of hosts. So sit back and strap in, as for the next 2 hours we leave no story undebated and no politician will be spared. It's the American Idiots Podcast live on Podcast Network 49, and it begins right now. Okay, back to the topics at hand. Manny, you look like you got a nice nap in there. Okay, so let's go ahead.
Quick question before we go too far, man. What's that music that you got after the wrestling wrap up?
I will have to send it to you. Literally, it was something I found on YouTube, and I kind of giggled about it because it fit, because it had Ric Flair there in the beginning. But right. I think it's called like Ric Flair type beat or something. I'll have to look it up and send you the link.
I just thought it was funny because he says he's Slick Rick for the hip hop enthusiast. I think it would have been funny to actually play a Slick Rick song.
Okay. That's interesting. I never thought about Slick Rick. You know, when I was young, Ric Flair was always Slick Rick. And then when I grew up and I heard about Slick Rick, the rapper, I'm like, Ric Flair? What? No. But yeah, no, that's how I got introduced to that Slick Rick. So I found out about Slick Rick.
The hip hop of that era was a lot of storytelling. I mean, it was really good. You know, it was before the gangster rap really took off, and it was fun to listen to.
Speaking of which, definitely want to send our thoughts and prayers and condolences out to the family of Biz Markie.
Yeah,
dang, man.
Yeah, I saw that, man. And he was young. I mean, he still had life to go. So that. I never did hear a cause. I don't know if they reported one, but yeah, we were out there on vacation whenever I saw that, and I was like, man.
Also, I kind of want to toss this out there for those that have been fans of Podcast Network 49 for quite some time. I just actually saw this message that was sent to us. Danny Williamson, who was on this show, who was on a variant of this show about a year and a half ago. He actually passed away July 7th. So definitely thoughts and prayers go out to him as well. He was a very young gentleman as well, 46 years old. So thoughts and prayers go out to his family as well. Okay. With that.
And while we're in memoriam, you know, we might as well recognize all those that are no longer with us on this show.
I mean, you ain't lying about that. Luckily, though, we do have a return. She's just planning her wedding right now. Tropic Thunder will be hopefully back before too long, though. So very excited to have her back before too long. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and look at this next story. Senators are beginning the process of marijuana legalization at the federal level. And we actually have a story from Fox 11 Los Angeles on this.
A new plan, and I'll tell you some high stakes involved in this proposal. We are talking about a multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry here in California alone, where marijuana, of course, is legal. But for those involved doing business legally here, the profit margin is slim, mostly because the feds still see marijuana as an illegal drug across the country. And that's a problem for a lot of folks who do business here, especially this top businessman who says he doesn't want to show his face, but does want to tell you about what's at stake, what could change if the feds have their way. Listen.
It would completely change our business. I mean, our business right now is held back by so many different things.
That from one of the top cannabis manufacturers and distributors in all of California, reacting to a push by top Democrats in the U.S. Senate to join California and other states in federally legalizing marijuana.
The doom and gloom predictions haven't materialized in any of these states. And as more and more states legalize marijuana, it's time for our federal cannabis law to catch up.
And catching up would give marijuana growers already licensed here in California access to what is now off limits because the feds still see marijuana as a scheduled narcotic.
Having to pay your state taxes, your city taxes in cash, having just the opportunity to have banks is one of the biggest things. We could refinance. We can't get loans on our buildings right now. We can't refi.
Important for a multi-billion-dollar-a-year business here in California that now is a cash-only business with absolutely no write-offs.
It's not a gold rush as everyone may think it is, but our profit margins are pretty slim. But if 280E goes away, I can write off labor, we can write off rent, we can write off certain things that, you can't do right now operating as a normal business.
If the feds legalize marijuana, it would clear users to travel from California across state lines without the fear of being arrested.
It has its goods and bads, but, the good, as long as they're using it for good purposes, that's all that matters.
And while the debate moves on, those already in California's legalized pot business predict the end is coming soon for the federal prohibition of marijuana.
It's everywhere. I call this prohibition part 2. I think it's the same thing as history repeats itself. We're going through it again. It's going to become federally legal sooner or later.
Sooner or later, he says, now live, something else involved in all of this. If the feds greenlight marijuana across the country, it would expunge, erase all the federal convictions of those who are already serving time on their nonviolent marijuana arrest. A lot has to play out before it would happen. Congress and the president would have to agree. And still, though, there would be a problem, perhaps, because the feds could say it's legal. And then as you travel to some states, the states themselves could say, no, it's not legal here. For instance, in Florida, it's not legal. So if you go from California, where it's legal, Florida, where it's still not legal, as a Dodger player found out recently, you still run into problems. The confusion continues. But still, the hope here at this point is maybe the feds will green light it, and that will help a lot of the business in this industry, in this state, move on and relieve some of those restrictions. For now, we're live here in Westchester. Back to both of you.
Okay, Manny, what are you thinking here? I mean, this is a long time coming. It's something that at this point, get it over with. Like, just do it. That's where I am on it.
I agree with you. I mean, marijuana is not the drug that the government made it out to be.
Right.
And the funny thing is, while the government was talking about how bad marijuana was, they were making things like LSD.
Facts.
So I mean, is the government the ones you really want to be talking to about this anyways? The popular saying is marijuana was never legalized because there's no way to regulate it, but we see it seems to be pretty easy to regulate.
Right.
And the fact that he said the doom and gloom scenario that everybody was saying was going to happen has not played out in any of the states that this has become legalized. I think everybody is going to look at it as a positive instead of a negative. And me personally, if the FDA is going to allow cigarettes, there shouldn't be an issue with marijuana.
Facts. Very true.
Just me personally.
Very true. I completely agree with that. You look at it, you look at these things, and like you mentioned, the doom and gloom scenario never occurred. We have prisons that, don't get me wrong, I'm not necessarily against the war on drugs, but we've got prisons that are overflowing with marijuana offenders that because of the war on drugs.
That's the big thing. I was going to let you talk. That's why I didn't go into that. But that's the big thing. They are small-time offenders.
Exactly.
They had a little over the limit that they should have had for personal use. It's not like they were trafficking bricks across county lines and state lines.
Exactly.
So,
it's like you said. I completely agree with what you said. It's a situation where you need to focus on the things that are actually harming people. Your LSDs, your cocaines, your cracks, so on and so forth. You don't see people.
Meth is bad in the United States.
Arkansas.
Cocaine is bad. I'm not trying to give cocaine a pass, but cocaine is nowhere near as bad as meth is.
No. Any sort, meth. What's the other ones? Pharmaceuticals. Let's be honest, is a huge problem in the country. It's a situation where, look at it. You don't see people going to rehab or losing their house over needing that next, high from weed. It's not a gateway drug. We've all, like I said, you were mentioning something. It's not what the government sold us that it was.
Right. And you've got doctors and you've got pharmacists that are sitting there pushing opioids out that are really messing up people's lives.
Agreed.
And they're free to walk down the street, no problem.
Exactly. And that's
meanwhile, the person that happened to have 2 ounces because they were going to smoke later is the one that gets racked up and thrown in prison.
I completely agree. It's a situation where, once again, you've got to look at what's actually hurting people. Like, yes, I understand that the federal government doesn't like to admit they're wrong. But guess what? New evidence has come forth to prove that you're wrong. There's no reason to stick your head in the sand. I do say that I would agree that we're here. We might as well do it. The Biden administration, being a Democratic regime, is the perfect administration to make it happen. It needs to happen.
Simultaneous possession of weed and a firearm, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
People moving bricks across state lines, definitely leave them in jail. Absolutely. But these people that were busted for small amounts, that's stupid.
Personal use cases are ridiculous. Trafficking, yes, you know what you were doing was wrong, and you were intentionally doing wrong things.
Right.
Personal use cases, it's absolutely asinine that those,
especially in California, because California was one of those biggest 3 strikes.
Yeah. Exactly.
Places. So, definitely in California, you really need to look at what these people were arrested and sentenced to prison time for.
Exactly.
But that does raise an interesting question. What happens to these people that are like that? Now they, could possibly be released.
Are they institutionalized?
Well, yeah, are they institutionalized? One, but what is the prison's going to do about that loss of income, since most prisons are personal now? So how are they going to fill it back up? What are they going to start targeting next?
Right, exactly. They ain't going to lose any money, let's be honest here.
Right. And they loved those small-time offenders like that being sent to prison because they weren't a hassle.
Oh, especially. They love 3-strike laws and things like that. Like
when you have murderers and people who commit assault and battery that can bond out and be on the streets, or get small sentences or mainly parole, while somebody that was caught with a couple of joints in their car is getting prison time, there's a big issue.
I got an idea. Let's go ahead and replace all the weed users with sex offenders. I think that would get some support.
Right.
Okay, so Chicago is banning travel, and they kind of hit on it in that news story earlier, from certain states to mitigate the COVID spread. And we have a story from CBS Chicago on this.
New at 5, 2 states back on Chicago's travel advisory. Cases in Missouri and Arkansas are on the way up again. So if you travel there and you were not vaccinated, the city wants you to either quarantine for 10 days or get a negative COVID test 3 days before returning to the city. The city removed the travel advisory last month. And take a look at this. We've charted how many people have gotten fully vaccinated in Illinois since January. You can see the curve appears to have plateaued the past few weeks at just over 6 million people. That's 50% of the population.
So let's talk about this. So it's kind of funny to me that there are these bans in place, these travel bans. And once again, everybody knows I'm no fan of this man, but how much shit did Trump get when he instituted travel bans?
Right.
I bring this subject up to, again, bring up the hypocrisy of the Democratic Party and
political parties, period.
Yeah, politics in general is hypocrisy. But real quick, before we do move on to the final subject, what's your thoughts here on Chicago banning travel from well, not banning travel, but, requiring a 10-day quarantine or a negative test from Arkansans?
That's their governor. I mean, their governor makes the rules over there. I think I've stated my case pretty well as to what I believe. I don't think a quarantine or a vaccine or any of that stuff is really going to curb these numbers.
Hell, the CDC at this point, let's be honest, the CDC at this point only requires a 7-day, or recommends, I should say. We use the word requires, but recommends a 7-day thing. My thing with this is, how do they enforce this? Unless you're coming in on a plane.
Question,
unless you're coming in on a plane, they have no clue where you're coming from.
Vaccinations, to my knowledge, is part of a HIPAA.
Very true.
So, I mean, how can they demand to know your health?
It's a good point. It's a darn good point. Okay, final subject before we get to our American Idiot of the Week. Child tax care payments are beginning to go out. This was one of the things that Biden has really hit very hard, but it may not be as good as what we first thought. And we have this story from CNBC television.
The White House is now celebrating the enhanced child tax credit as groundbreaking, not just because of its size and scope, but also because it's the first major tax credit that is available in advance and delivered in installments every single month. Now, the first payments will start hitting bank accounts today. Parents can receive up to $300 a month or $3,600 for the year for children up to age 6. Now, for older kids up to age 17, it's going to be $250 a month or $3,000 this year. The Treasury Department estimates roughly $15 billion will go out today, covering nearly 60 million children. Now, a White House official compared these payments to Social Security because they're regular and reliable. And in a statement, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen called the benefit both an economic and a moral victory for America. But the extra money is only in effect for this year. President Biden has proposed extending the benefit through 2025. That's estimated to cost $450 billion. Senate Democrats said that funding for an extension is included in their $3.5 trillion budget resolution that they agreed to earlier this week, but they did not specify for how long. And the White House is facing pressure from progressives to make this benefit permanent. Guys?
Hey, Elon, I think part of the big question that goes into inflation would be looking at something like this, because I think this has been an overlooked sort of stimulus. We probably haven't focused on it all that much. And there are a lot of families that need this money. There are other families that make relatively a lot of money who will also be qualifying for this. It's going to add to that whole debate because it's not incredibly targeted.
Yeah, so there's sort of 2 points to that. The first is that the payments were capped to households making, I think, $150,000 a year for a dual income household. So they did try to limit who would be able to receive it compared to sort of previous stimulus payments. So that's number one. The second thing is that I think the White House is believing, or at least hoping, that a lot of the money, rather than being spent on durable goods, which you guys have talked about, the supply chain for that being incredibly tight right now, that a lot of that money would instead be spent on services. And so that would not increase inflation or not sort of put the pressure on the supply chains in the same way that spending on couches, cars, et cetera, might do. So there is some hope that we're seeing this rotation from spending on consumer goods to spending on services, and that will help alleviate some of those concerns. But certainly, a lot of Republicans are pointing to this and saying this money is going to be yet another disincentive for people to work, and it's going to exacerbate the labor market shortage, and that's also going to create those sort of wage and inflationary pressures that are abundant in the economy right now.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC.
So the government is now paying child support. I mean, literally, that's the way I can describe it. The government is now paying child support with these child tax care payments. I completely agree with the Republicans in this case. You're looking at something that, number one, is going to encourage people, like literally now, what is the point of getting a job? I could understand, Democrats pushing back on the stimulus, but literally now you're talking about monthly payments of $350 per child. I'm thinking, so $350 payments times 4 would be 3, 6, 9, 12, almost $1,300 a month if you have 4 children. Yeah, that's where we are. What's the incentive to go out and get a job? Honestly, what's the incentive? I mean, yes, that's a little over minimum wage, but as long as you're spending it correctly, you can take care of your children. As long as it's a 2-income household, one of those incomes is being, thanks to this child tax care credit, one of those incomes are being supplemented.
The problem with that is that amount of money does not have to be noted on anything else.
Okay, see, and that's where I thought that it was the downfall was. I thought that it was going to come back to bite you in the ass on.
Oh, it is.
Okay.
It is. It's going to be deducted off your taxes.
Okay.
We've already gotten the letter. Our daughter qualified.
Now you
and
can
we already have our $300. While we were on vacation, it went into our account.
Oh, so we
don't need it.
Out.
We don't need it.
Right, absolutely.
So my question on this is, while they say it was not targeted, was it? Were they seeing the last name and deciding, hey, that's a Hispanic last name, let's give it to them?
I don't know that when they say targeted, I think what they mean by that is the same as when we were talking about the stimulus, not giving it to the people that make over. In this case, I think they said the cap was at $150K. So what they mean is targeting it to a certain income group that may need it more than, the higher wage earners.
And I think they say that, but I honestly think that they are educated to minority surnames.
Right. I would agree. So there was no opt-out option, because I heard that there was an opt-out option. I don't have children, by the way.
I actually did see a Yahoo email that came across my Yahoo that said, here's how to opt out, but I didn't bother to read it.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
and of course, I also didn't realize that this was going to be a monthly thing. I thought it was a one-time deal. My wife was saying they're going to take that out of our taxes when our taxes come around. I told her, well, since we don't need it and they'll be deducting that from the taxes, just put it into a savings account and then it's not a big deal.
Right, true. And I mean, let's be honest, some people don't receive that much in taxes and they're about to receive these child tax care credits and think that they're living high on the hog. And Come to find out, the IRS is about to pay you a visit.
Right. I did think it was good that they pointed out that that is going to exacerbate the employee shortage that we have. You see all these people that talk about, oh, it's a minimum wage thing is why we have an employee shortage. But everything that goes into a business, you budget for your employees.
Right.
So if I have, and I know these are small numbers, but I'm just using numbers to make a point. If I have $50 to pay my payroll, that's what I've budgeted, and I've got 5 people on payroll. I'm able to pay each one of them $10 an hour. If I have to go up to $15 an hour, well, my budget didn't increase from my payroll.
Right.
So now I've got to decide which ones to lay off, because now I've got to spend $45 on 3 people instead of being able to pay 5 people $10.
Right, exactly. So definitely, I mean, and it's a situation where, yes, I can see what they mean by it's a minimum wage problem, because essentially what it comes down to is money. So it's kind of both when you look at it. So if you're minimum wage, your income is going to be supplemented, and you have at least 4 kids, your income is going to be supplemented by these child tax care payments.
Right.
So there is no incentive, unless it is over minimum wage job, for you to go out and get another, or for you to go out and get a job. Absolutely none. Except for at the end of the year, you owe in taxes.
Right.
But yeah, I mean,
but
it's rough all the way around.
It's not just that though, Mike. I mean, you look at your WIC benefits, you look at food stamps, you look at housing allowances, you look at phone allowances, you look at all kinds of stuff that they provide.
Right.
So at the end of the day, you're really not having to work because everything is provided for you.
That's true. I mean, now I can admit that those Obama phones, as they were called at the time, they're not that great. I'm just saying. But yeah, I can certainly see your point. Okay. Anything else on the child tax care credits?
Yeah, I think it's funny that they expect it to be spent on services.
Yeah,
taking care of your responsibilities, that I found to be funny. The government is wanting you to fail. Bottom line, don't worry about your rent. Don't worry about your electric bill. Don't worry about any of this.
Don't exactly, like everything that they said services, not supplies or what have you. So
Right.
yeah, don't go out and buy that baby crib that you may desperately need. Go out and pay somebody to clean your house or something. Like, bro. Ugh.
Yeah.
So
the government is trying to teach us to not be smart with our money, which is crazy.
I would agree. Okay, American Idiot of the Week time. Real quick, my American Idiot of the Week is going to be the Obama administration. Damn it. The Biden administration and the government of the state of Arkansas for ineffectively communicating the benefits of the vaccine and ineffectively controlling what is going on with this Delta variant. I believe that even though I would have given Biden passing grade until this variant came out, I now think that with how few people are getting vaccinated here in the state of Arkansas and in our surrounding states, it's not about what you can get people who are more than willing and already sold on a vaccine to do. It's about getting the people that are not sold on the vaccine to actually go out and get vaccinated. And right now, it doesn't appear that the government is doing their job on that. So, effectively, I mean, it's kind of laughable to think about the stuff that Governor Hutchinson was giving away. He was giving away $1 million scratch-off ticket, and there was some other. You had like an option of 3. I never got any of it, but you had an option of like 3 different things. I think you could get a scratch-off, a hunting and fishing license for free, and then there was one more. But yeah, laughable.
I don't think hunting and fishing license should cost any money. I don't think.
Agreed there too.
I mean,
I don't think
that is a means of providing food for your family.
Right.
It should not be dependent on being able to get a license.
Right, exactly. I mean, maybe
that's where everybody should be complaining about it, not to freaking get a license to vote.
Right. Well, I mean, and when you look at it, so let's say I can see hunting, but what do you really need a license to fish? All you're doing is tossing a reel out into the fucking lake somewhere and catching a fish. There's skill to it, but like it's not a skill that you need to pass a test to get a license.
Right.
I can understand hunting with gun safety and everything, but
I understand the regulations they want to put on how many specific species you can catch. Continue to do that, but you shouldn't fault a person for going and catching a couple of fish so that they can eat that night.
Right, exactly. Plus, the game and fish sucks anyway. There's some bad stuff. Okay. Manny, who's your American Idiot of the Week?
Oh, my American Idiot of the Week was almost Obama himself for saying that Facebook is killing people. But, did you not hear about that?
No.
Oh, yeah, he was pointing misinformation of the COVID virus at Facebook and basically saying that it's Facebook's fault that the numbers are starting to go up and they're the ones killing people. I think he tried to crawfish out of that point he had said, but yeah, he explained it better the next day.
Bro, don't bury your reputation. You're pretty well looked at amongst Republicans and Democrats. You're not universally hated. Don't kill your reputation. Just sit in Chicago and, enjoy your retirement.
So then I came across the story of Paul Allard Hodgkins, which is the first person to be charged with a felony for obstructing an official proceeding for the June 6th Capitol riots.
Okay.
As I got to reading it, I mean, he's looking at a 20-year term. I'm not sure exactly what he got sentenced to. I know they did specify, but I didn't come across it again.
Mm-hmm.
But then I started looking, as I was reading, as I was looking at him to be my American Idiot of the Week, I changed it again to the judge who sentenced him because he's the third person to be charged.
Mm-hmm.
2 others that had been charged were only charged with illegal demonstrating, and one of them got 3 years parole, no jail time. The second one got 6 months, and he was released with time served. So at the end of the day, my American Idiot of the Week is District Court Judge Randolph Moss for this quote.
Okay.
Imposing a punishment that includes prison time will send a loud, clear message. Well, you had 2 other chances to make that message.
Right.
It's funny that the person you decided to impose that on was the only one that was holding a Trump flag.
Ah. Interesting.
That is why he is my American Idiot of the Week. If you want to make an example, make an example.
Yeah.
Don't base it on somebody's political lines.
I absolutely agree with that. That is
was the guy trespassing with all the video they got? Yes, I believe he was trespassing.
Right.
Bring him up on that. Was the obstruction the official proceedings? He was saying that he kind of wandered in. He wasn't trying to do anything wrong. He didn't destroy anything. But at the end of the day, I mean, they can't look at it. My question is, why aren't they going after these people that were causing violence? Why aren't they going after these people that were tearing shit up?
You know what's interesting to me is we heard so much about the guy with his feet up on Nancy's desk here in Arkansas, but I haven't heard anything about what he's been charged with or what he is going to be sentenced to or what have you. I don't even know if they've had a trial yet. So I mean, it's interesting.
They haven't. These are the only 3 people that have been tried so far.
Okay.
And this guy is the only one that has received a felony charge.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's why I made the judge my American Idiot of the Week, because he's trying to make an example out of someone, but he chose the only person that was holding a Trump flag, so it looks more political than anything.
Absolutely. And I mean, let's be honest, like you said, why are we not giving the harsher sentences to the people that, for example, were smearing shit on the walls of the Capitol? Like, come on.
And even while that's bad, why aren't we looking at these people that were trying to drag the police officers out to beat the shit out of them?
Right.
Those are the ones that need some felony time.
Exactly. I would agree. I would absolutely agree. Okay, Manny. Well, we're pretty much up against it. We did pretty good today, an hour and 3/4. So I'm pretty much ready to go. Anything you got before we get out of here?
No, sir. We got SCW Wrestling in Mountain Pine, Arkansas this weekend. Wow. Did that just blow my mind? Freedom's Ring.
Freedom Ring, yep.
Freedom's Ring. One of our big 3 shows. Definitely come out. It's a good time. Next month we will have Al Snow in the house.
Ooh.
So y'all check out South Central Wrestling on Facebook, SCW Arkansas on YouTube, SouthCentralWrestling.com on the web.
Absolutely. And actually, friend of the show, Mr. Aaron is going to be there doing some announcing duty. So definitely excited for him. Excited for the card that I've seen. It looks pretty amazing. So definitely, if you're in the area, go on out and support some of your local artists, we'll call them.
Yes.
But until then, we will see you next Monday night for the Manic Hispanic. I am Money Mike, and see you later.